Hello, everybody. So we're talking about the exciting world of AI. And so we're going to start at the 30,000, then we're going to drop down to the 20, and then we'll work to get down to about the 3 to 5 level as we're going through this. The title, that was brought to us by our marketing department, so they like a lot of words here, so I don't expect everybody to manage that one. So, go ahead, Terry. So again, the quick agenda, we're going to hit the definitions of AI, or types of AI, tools how, as a weapon, security needed, implementation plan, and we'll hit final thoughts and we'll take questions. But this is an interaction time. This is supposed to be a good thing for you all. So if you've got questions, please don't hesitate to just raise a hand and let's get those questions out, because we want this to be focused on you all, not what we put together on the slides. We can always fly through the slides and we can send them out to you after as well. So we're the AI evangelists. We're out there preaching about AI, talking about it. How do we incorporate it into our businesses? What are the things that we need to think about? So Terry, next slide. So this just talks a little bit about RiverRun. So I did jump the slide a little bit. I'm Paul Riedl. I'm the CEO of RiverRun. I get to come out and meet people and have a lot of fun talking with people, and our team gets to do all the hard work. Terry Beatty is the RiverRun CISO, which is the Chief Information Security Officer. So he knows more about security than I will ever know, and it's just a blast working with him on this, because the knowledge he's going to bring to this, talking about AI and keeping us secure, is unbelievable. And so thank you, Terry, for coming and being a part of this. Keep us on that slide, though. This talks real quickly about RiverRun. We're a 32-year-old firm. I'm going around telling people my dad started the company because I'm way too young to have a company this old. Oh, tough crowd. So that's my little spiel here. We've got a 72-member team. We've been focusing on secure managed services for the 32 years that we've been in business. Our mission is helping our people, our clients, and our community achieve meaningful results. And we do that through these type of sessions. We do that through sitting and listening to clients. We do that through the interactions. We do that through LinkedIn posts. Our job is to get the word out to you all about AI and about keeping yourselves secure, and that's one of the things we take very seriously. Go ahead, Terry. So we look at the definitions here. We're going to have 2 quick definitions, and no, I won't quiz you on this, but if we look at cybersecurity, cybersecurity is the secure and responsible use of information and communication technology. It is being responsible for your information by keeping your information secure and backed up. The last thing is AI raises the stakes for cybersecurity, both in a good way and a little more challenging way. So we also want to talk about what's artificial intelligence. And so that's the technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. So again, AI, what that's doing is it's what we do. We take data in, whether we're thinking about it or not, we're always taking data in. You're looking at me kind of judging the guy, he's wearing a tie and kind of figuring that kind of stuff out. What's this guy going to be like? What's this going to be happening? You're taking the data in. Is the temperature of the room good? And you're coming to conclusions as you're doing that. That's what AI does for us. So Terry, next. So I'm going to have Terry talk about the wonderful world of AI evolution, because most people think AI, that's pretty new. Terry?
There's a sense in which AI began with the first electronic computing technologies all the way back when they were in just universities and government institutions, and our abilities to basically replace what used to be called a computer, which was actually a human, who would process statistics and so forth with a machine. Technology advanced over the years until we get to the point where in 1997, back in the early 90s, they started playing with neural network models and so forth. But in 1997, really machine learning, as we understand it today, came out. Machine learning is a subset of AI that enables machines to learn from existing data and improve on the data to make decisions or predictions. And basically what happens is you give it a predetermined pool of data, and it is able to look at that data, determine patterns and so forth, predict and make recommendations to you. Now, machine learning is still very much in use today. We have progressed to the point of deep learning. What's the difference between machine learning and deep learning? Basically, machine learning has to do with you giving the computer a data set to learn from, and then telling Whereas deep learning, you are actually a little less defined about that data set. Rather than giving it specific parameters, you just feed it a ton of data. The machine learns the parameters all by itself. This provides a much more incisive set of predictions for you and set of operations, but it takes a lot more processing power and it takes a longer time to do. Fast forward to what all the buzz is today, and we talk about generative AI. What is generative AI? Well, you take everything that's combined with machine learning and deep learning, only now, instead of just having a machine that's incisive, something that can make predictions and recommendations for you that are highly accurate, it now can take a pool of data and create on its own. That's why it's called generative AI.
So we look at the current state of AI right now, and you'll see the sign that we've got up there, the little picture that just talks about the Wild West. In essence, we are in the Wild West time right now. There's not a ton of rules, there's not a ton of knowledge as far as how do we control this? What are we supposed to do with this? So if you think back to the old Westerns and the OK Corral and that type of stuff, that's kind of the image we want you to have as we're starting this. And our objective is to hopefully get it a little tighter for you all as we're going through this.
So a little bit of understanding about AI would be important for us, and we're going to see this towards the end of our presentation as well. But in terms of background, it's important for us to remember that AI is still an immature technology, and we have immature expertise on it. Our maturity level in handling AI is new. How many of you out there have had children? How many of you were fully qualified to be parents when we first had children? Nobody, right? So what happens is your child is immature, but the parents who are raising that child are immature as well. It's important for us to have that perspective as we are beginning to handle AI. AI, it's important to understand that it's not an out-of-the-box solution, and it's really important for us to understand that because when we all turn on Chrome and use our Google accounts now, we have access to Gemini, which is becoming more and more helpful by the day. That leaves us with the impression that it's an out-of-the-box solution, but in fact, to get the really useful work done for us, a lot of work has to take place. It's also important for us to remember that AI is descended from open source technology. Now, the reason that's important is because open source technology, of course, the underpinnings of open source technology are readily available, publicly accessible by many parties, and it's important for us to understand that. Because we don't always know who has had access to it, and what level of access they've had or what influence they've had on it and so forth.
So wait one second, Terry. So building off of Terry's analogy about the family, it's as you start looking at the influences that you allowed your kids to have, you were very restrictive on that type of influence, who got to influence them. And that's what Terry's talking about when we start talking about the underpinnings of the AI available. It's all over the world. We can get this information. And so that's something, again, keep in your mind, how do we keep control of this information as it's coming into us?
It's very important to understand that AI, just like a baby, grows with the information that they receive. They grow in maturity and awareness in their surroundings and so forth. And so AI is absolutely dependent upon a huge amount of information. Its appetite is voracious in that perspective. And there's some other unique circumstances that produces. So for example, an AI engine is then turned out on the internet, turned out on the World Wide Web, where it's going to meet human content, it's going to come in contact with human content. It needs that. That's how it grows, that's how it helps us. But it's also going to come in contact with other AI engines. And one of the things that's been demonstrated is that when AI comes in contact with other AI engines, that the quality of that content can begin to deteriorate just a little bit. At least in its current conception, we actually call, the term for that right now is cannibalistic. When AI data starts consuming other AI data, what happens is the quality of that data set can rapidly go downhill. Another thing that's important to recognize with AI is that you get what you pay for. meaning if you're just using the free versions of AI, you're going to get some help out of it. If you're casually browsing around, you're going to get some help. But if you want AI to do some very serious work for you, what's going to happen is, just like a child, you're going to end up having to invest in that relationship. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that happens. For AI to work, it must have access to information, as we've just talked about. It's designed and configured to consume all of that information. One of the things that you have to be careful about, and if you end up getting into a consultation with somebody like Microsoft over Copilot or Google over Gemini or so forth, where you want to enter into a relationship with them, one of the first things they're going to tell you is that it's very important for you to determine what your boundaries are, what information you wanted to learn, what information you wanted to have access to, and it's very important that you have all of your permissions in your network locked down. And the reason is because if you're not careful, it will access all of your information. It will access everything that you haven't specifically determined that it should not have access to. It can access all of your information, and if you don't set the proper guardrails around it, it can also share all of your information. A little bit like your child telling the family secrets when you're going to a gathering and so forth. So it's very important to make sure that when you're setting up AI, that you're careful with your permissions, careful and thoughtful about your data set, and also careful with the guardrails around it. We're going to talk a little bit about types of AI domains. And we're going to talk about internal and external AI domains because it'll help you to think in terms of how AI impacts your business and what kind of AI you want to be using for what. Now, internal domains has to do with the universe that you have built and control all of the data points. So in other words, you have set up AI internally. You wanted to do some very specific functions, and so basically you have full control of that situation. It's an exclusive tool that's being used for your company, and because of that, you have control over what AI learns, what it's doing for you, and over the security. Let's talk a little bit about what we mean by external AI domains. So external AI domains is what you would think of encountering when you're just going out and once again, I'm going to keep using Gemini as an example. Gemini pops up, it's helpful when you ask it some questions, it pops up with an idea list for you. Some of it is general, by the day it's getting a little bit more specific. But also there are publicly available external domains for you. So you're subscribing to something, and what's going on is you're reaping the benefits of a larger data set, meaning that that information is coming from not just your company, but it's also coming from the larger business community and the world itself. The thing about that is you have a little less control with respect to the data that's being gathered, a little less control with what's gone into the AI engine, because it's all coming from the collective wisdom and experience of the larger community. Now, what are the differences? Where would you encounter an internal AI domain? If you set up and subscribe to a form of AI engine that will help you with, say, document research, or will help you with the vast quantity of documents that you have within your organization, or if you're subscribing to an AI engine that's helping you with your manufacturing and production process itself. Whereas an external AI domain would be something that you would be subscribing to that would maybe help you with your document writing, with your research assistance, and so forth. Now, external AI domains require a little extra attention to your own security and to your governance, because if the data is coming from a larger data set on the outside, then you have a little less control over where that data has come from. Also, if it is a if it's an AI engine that's serving a larger community, then you want to make sure that you have control over what's being put out or shared with others via AI.
So we start looking at AI, we want to make sure there's a positive aspect to all this, that the AI is a productive tool. And that's one of the big things that's why we're embracing it as in the business world. And we're embracing it as individuals because it helps us do things. And so as we look at the AI, some of the general are automate routine tasks. That's one of the big things that we see it being used for. Second thing is streamline and optimize workflows. How can we be more efficient? What can we do better? Third thing that we've got is pattern identification. And that's a big one that's used as far as, okay, help us identify patterns so we can figure out how to be more efficient, or we can figure out what to take to market, or we can figure out what to change. And so that's a big one that AI does. Now, it's been gathering patterns and identifying patterns for years and years, but now it's able to take action, and that's the things that we want to make sure we're prepared for. The other thing is it can be used as a front line for client service. Yeah, I know. It's not as exciting as getting to talk to an individual, but that's the reality of the world that we live in, unfortunately. I mean, we go to McDonald's, we get to hit a kiosk, we get to start punching buttons. That's the way that the world's heading, and so we just have to make sure that the AI that we're putting in front for our clients to experience is going to be a positive experience for them. The other thing is obviously the product research and design. How do we bring things to market faster? How do we spend less time, less dollars developing something and more time getting it into production, and so we can get it out to the market as quickly as possible? And so that's some of the general things that we see AI doing for us as well.
Let's talk about some specific use cases. Let's talk about manufacturing for a moment. What can AI be used for in manufacturing? It can be used for predictive maintenance, to predict failures. Ford is a big front runner in this, by the way, using AI in order to be able to predict when production is going to fail on a line, when maintenance needs to take place. In fact, for every automobile that they build, Ford also builds a digital copy of that automobile, specifically for the purposes of predictive maintenance. Quality control and defect detection in real time, being able to determine when a run is going south and maybe needs to be altered so that a large amount of production hasn't taken place, and then the whole line has to stop and precious time is lost in the process. Product design, simulations, and production, and client data points. AI can be used in all aspects of product design and is a terrific conversation partner for your engineering and R&D teams.
The reason that we put the client data points in that particular line is also because, again, as we talked about AI is just grabbing information. And the faster we can get feedback from our clients, the faster we can improve our products, the faster we can go back to market with something new and enhanced. That just gives us a lot of benefit. And so again, if we think about AI, it's just grabbing information. Well, if we can grab it from our clients as quickly as possible, it's benefit to them and it's benefit to us as well.
Supply chain and inventory management, perhaps one of the most spectacular examples of this today, is something that's everywhere around us, and that is Amazon. Amazon is heavily dependent upon AI for its supply chain and inventory, and they are also front leader in using cobots. Does everybody know what a cobot is? A cobot is a collaborative robot. So it's a little bit like a partner. So a human being is involved in the process, and they have a partner as an assistant instead of another human being. And that's basically what a collaborative robot is. Let's talk a little bit about legal use cases. AI is used to save time in research. Basically, if you know a lawyer, or if you are a lawyer, you're familiar with the fact that there's just a ton, just a myriad of case documentation that's out there that needs to be referenced and so forth. And rather than having human researchers, which are very good at what they do, but they can only research so fast, everything takes place in a linear fashion, Now you have a machine, a robot, that is capable of doing it all at the same time. Looking at contracts, being able to recognize either terms that are dangerous or clauses that are missing, something that's been left out, making sure that they conform with compliance regulations and so forth. Automated responses to standard client questions. And of course, recording and organizing meeting notes is something that many people have dipped their toe in the water with AI and so forth even today. And of course, contract analysis and management. Now, some common forms of AI that are recognizable to us out in the marketplace would be ChatGPT. They get a lot of press. Microsoft Copilot gets a lot of press. Google Gemini, Llama 2. But AI is also built into many applications. And in fact, that's the area where AI may do us the most good for use when we are talking about manufacturing or industry in some way, because what you're talking about at that point are some AI engines that maybe are a little less well known on the surface. Their names don't get all the product attention on the billboards, but they are in fact the engine that is dropped into the car, so to speak. And so many of the professional service applications that you may be using are moving towards using AI in one way, shape, or form. Let's talk a little bit about weaponized AI for a moment.
Before we jump too much into that. Okay, everybody take a quick breath. Okay. Any questions? I know we're kind of going through this information a little quickly, but please, again, remember, if you've got questions, let us know. As we've talked about, Terry's going to start talking about a little bit of the weaponized aspect of it, of the AI as well, just because it's going to understand the positives and the negatives as we're going through this, so we can make solid decisions as business leaders. Terry?
A little bit of a disclaimer. So Paul indicated that I'm the Chief Information Security Officer, which means that I am in fact paid to be paranoid. And it's my job to give you nightmare scenarios that will keep you up at night. But it is important when we're looking at any technology that we look realistically at both the positives and also the potential pitfalls. So we're going to talk a little bit about weaponized AI. One of the things that AI is capable of doing now, understand that if we are using AI for good research purposes, threat actors can also use AI for nefarious research purposes. One of the things that, for example, ransomware groups can do is they research their targets. In a targeted ransomware attack, they know what your IGM is. They know what your revenues are on a day-by-day basis and a yearly basis. They know what your cyber insurance contract is. They know what your coverage is. They know when it renews. But all of this information has to be researched basically by hand, unless you get AI involved. Now, instead of researching in a linear fashion, they can research organizations on a large scale, basically exponentially multiplying their targets. Deepfakes, voice and image imitation. I'm going to tell you about something that's a little bit close to home. So my wife is from India. We've been married for 28 years. Many of you are familiar with the conflict that's going on the other side of the world right now. A well-reputed news organization, one that is a household name, just like Newsweek or CBS or NBC would be here, is India Today. So circulating all around that side of the globe is an episode of India Today in which they're talking about widespread destruction of Pakistan going on. The horror basically without lights, defense systems all down, the whole nation on fire and so forth. And the news anchor is a woman who is a well-known news anchor there. Everybody would recognize her. She's a household name and she doesn't kid around with things. The only problem is none of it's true. None of it's real. And India Today had nothing to do with it whatsoever. It caused the Prime Minister Modi, to have to actually go on national and international TV and say, hey, listen, this is not us. This did not happen. So why am I telling you this? Because that's the capability of AI with respect to producing deepfakes. That's something that is a very real thing all of us are going to have to be watching for in the not too distant future. Reverse psychology. So one of the things we mentioned at the beginning is that it's very important to build guardrails around your AI engine when you put it in place so that it doesn't reveal too much information about your organization. But AI can also be used for the reverse purpose to trick another AI engine into revealing information that you would not want it to reveal. I told you my job is to give people nightmares at night. Now, CAPTCHA tricks. We all have dealt with CAPTCHA where we have to identify the sign for the pattern recognition or the letters or so forth. And this has traditionally been used as a way of proving that a human being is actually a human being and not a bot. Only now AI knows how to do this. So we have challenges with respect to proving who people are. Data set poisoning. If AI is dependent upon the information that is being fed into it in order to produce the results that you're looking for, then one of the ways to sabotage that operation would be to poison the data set that's going into AI. What would that do? It would cause us to come to wrong conclusions, lead us to wrong decisions, lead us to wrong behaviors, and so forth. So these are all dangers that cause AI to also function as a weapon. Finally, something that gives my security team a nightmare at night is something called jailbreaking. Now, for you geeks in the room, how many of you ever heard of jailbreaking your phone? Jailbreaking your so when your phone is released, it's released with an Android operating system or an iOS operating system that has been basically boxed in. It's given a very specific set of functions that your phone manufacturer wants you to do with that phone. And what is jailbreaking? Jailbreaking is the ability to get outside of that into the larger capabilities of the operating system, isn't it? So jailbreaking in AI is used by threat actors today to be able to cross platforms. So for example, a Windows virtual machine residing inside of an ESXi host, two completely different operating systems. What if there was a threat, a piece of malware that was capable of transcending operating systems? It was capable of actually breaking out of the virtual machine into the host. Well, now once it's in the host, it has access to the larger network, doesn't it? So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing start to transpire today. So platform leaping basically is the explanation of that I just mentioned. Let's talk a little bit about operational risks with respect to AI. So operational risks aren't necessarily risks that are posed by threat actors. Operational risks are the things that you are going to be facing just in the course of doing your business. So with AI, it's dependent upon data. Bad data in means bad behavior out. When we're raising our children, we want to make sure they're exposed to the right people, don't we? We want to make sure that they have the right friends. We want to make sure they have the right teachers and so forth, because that's going to guide the direction of their life. The same thing happens with AI. And so it's important that the data that we're putting into it is clean and complete and what we want it to know. Another operational risk is that our proprietary data can be given away if we've been careless about setting up the guardrails, the fences, if we've been careless about setting up permissions and so forth. Another problem that AI has that insurance companies have learned about for the last couple of decades is the opportunity to come to incorrect conclusions with whether they're either wrong or illegal. Well, what do we mean by wrong conclusions? Of course, we understand how those can come from wrong data or from incomplete data. So, for example, if I wanted to gather an opinion poll and I wanted to get what the general public feels about a certain item, let's maybe say politics for a moment. Okay? If I want to get information on what the general public feels about a certain topic or so forth, I want to make sure that when I'm taking that data set, that I'm going to a wide variety of different neighborhoods to take that data set, don't I? If I only go to one particular type of neighborhood or one particular type of environment, do you think my data set's going to be very complete? No, it won't. So the same thing happens. Now, what are we talking about with illegal? Well, the reality of this, insurance companies have gotten themselves in trouble in the past by allowing computers to make decisions for them, because the computer doesn't care about what the current rhetoric is or what the current environment is. All the computer cares about is what's actually taking place. So if you give it the wrong set of data, it could actually come in, make conclusions that would be discriminatory or illegal for your organization. Another danger is overall dependency on AI, becoming over-dependent upon it. So, for example, how many of you have ever been troubled by the fact that you can now drive someplace and have no idea how you actually got there? That comes from over-dependency upon our technology. Well, the same thing can happen with AI, and so it's important for us to recognize in the future, how do we make sure that we have a human control and understanding of what's transpiring, even if we're using this technology.
Another thing about that is if you think about ChatGPT, what's that designed for? It's designed to get us information quicker so that we can come up with, again, good conclusions, good documents, and things like that. So I gave an assignment to somebody in our office, and I said, go research this for me and come back and hit ChatGPT. Let's see how that works for you. So she came back very proud, very excited. She handed me the document. I said, fantastic. What did you learn? She said, what do you mean? I said, well, what did it say? So I put that in the recycle bin. I said, go learn something. So that's the piece to this AI, that we've got to make sure that we're not becoming over-dependent on it, and we're not just saying, oh, off it goes. Terry?
So another risk is having an incomplete data model. If we have not put enough information into the system, then it's not going to be as productive for us as we would like. It may not make as accurate of determinations for us as we would like. So it's important that we're considering what data we're putting in, how much data we're putting in, what kind of data we're putting in. Another operational risk with AI has to do with technology in general. And this is one that business owners and executive teams tend to take very, very personally and seriously. Because you build your business based upon service, don't you? You build your business based upon handshakes, based upon agreements with people, based upon trust. Those things tend to erode the more and more that we depend upon technology. And so the wrong use of AI or AI that isn't used strategically in the right places can lead to a loss of human touch. It can also lead to a potential commoditization of service offerings. That's actually happening in many industries today, including, quite frankly, the IT industry. Because as everything becomes more and more automated, in the perception of many people, it all becomes about the bottom line. It all becomes about the amount of dollars. If everybody is delivering the same type of service, and there's no face in front of it, there's no personal touch in front of it, then what happens is the offering or the product becomes commoditized. Once it becomes commoditized, it's harder for you to sell based upon relationships and trust.
So we need to talk about the security that we want to get in place before we start this adventure down the wonderful world of AI. So one of the big things that we want to make sure that we incorporate is strong internal tools. And so the strong internal tools that we're talking about are EDR. So that's the desktop. That's protecting our desktop. That's kind of like the antivirus system. We've got email monitoring, where we're paying attention to the email that's coming and going. We got to make sure we're keeping tabs on that. System monitoring, That's what's happening on our system. Is everything performing correctly? And the last part to that is that's managed by a SOC. A SOC is a security operations center. And the reason that we talk about the SOC is because the SOC is the eyes and ears on your system 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And that's a critical piece to a successful security plan that we put in place. River Run, we use a SOC. We have a SOC service that actually takes care of all of our clients because they're up all the time. They can get us the information that we need. They've got the tools. We implement, we manage, we keep those tools running. But that's a big piece to the success. We want to make sure that we understand what the strong governance, or we have strong governance and controls in place. How are we going to use our system? What are we going to allow people to do? We'll talk more about that with the AI, obviously. Incident response plan. This is a critical piece. If you don't have an incident response plan, no matter if you're going in the world of AI or you're not, you want to get one. The incident response plan is critical because what it does is it helps you identify when you're having a security event. It helps you determine what do you do? How do you react? How do you move? Who do you call? You have to get your insurance company involved. You have to get your insurance broker involved. And you have to get your attorneys involved. And the attorneys are there to make sure that things aren't said that aren't supposed to be said and all these things. So it's just it's a mess. And that's why having an incident response plan, when you get some type of security event, it allows you to recover quicker and hopefully a little calmer. The other thing we want to make sure is that we're talking before we implement something, AI awareness training. What is AI? We want our people to understand it. We want our people to start embracing it, and we want our people to understand where the risks are. That's the big piece to this. Again, remember, we've got this data, we've got this pulling this data out. We want people to understand that if you put things in or put parameters in and is grabbing bad data, you're going to be reporting on bad data. We want to make sure people know how to use it and that they're aware of the good parts and the bad parts of it. The last part that we want to have is a solid plan. And the solid plan is what we're going to be talking about, the details in here, to make sure that again, you're thinking about what needs to happen. Our plan has a lot of questions in it. So as I said, I see some people taking notes. We'll get slide decks to you as well. But it's just one of those things to think about as far as how you're planning this piece. One of the statistics that we've got is 78% of the CISOs now admit AI-powered cyber threats are having a significant impact on their organization. That's, again, one of those scary things. That means that the bad actors are using AI. We want to make sure we're using AI. On the other end, the things that we're talking about, the security is a big piece. When we start getting into our plan, you'll see that we've got a picture of a rapids. So you think about AI, and it's kind of like that. You jump on a raft, you throw your helmet on, you grab the paddle, and you jump on into the river, and off you go. And so that's what can happen. It's going to start moving fast once you start incorporating AI into what you're doing. And you want to make sure that you're prepared for it. You want to make sure you have the right guide on that boat. You want to make sure that guide is experienced, and you want to make sure that your people understand when to paddle and when to brace themselves for hitting a rock. So we got to make sure that we're paying attention to those things.
So with respect to a strong plan, how many of you have ever been whitewater rafting before? So there's no warning about what the rapids are like when you first get into the dock, is it? That comes a little bit later. So it's important that you already plan for that ahead of time. Things that we need to do in order to plan for that with respect to AI is, number one, ask ourselves what kind of work do we want AI to do, and therefore which AI domain is going to be best for us. Are we looking for something that is an internal engine that's going to be specific to our organization, or are we able to use a subscriber model to something that is a little bit larger in the community? Who needs to be involved in your AI design? Because it has more to do than just your IT team. Absolutely, your IT team needs to be involved, but every aspect of your organization needs to be involved in planning in terms of what information does it need and what do we want to do. What do we want to get out of AI? We don't want to just have a child in order to have a child. What do we want AI to do for us? What is our purpose for that child's life? And so, is it a manufacturing process? Is it for research? We don't want to have a shiny new object just for the sake of having a shiny new object. So we want to make sure that we're using it with purpose and that we've well defined what is it that we are going to expect of it and what is it that we're going to do. What data do we want to allow in and out? It's important that we not only consider what data we want AI to consume, what we want it to be exposed to in the world and what's going to be useful for us. We also want to determine what do we want it to allow out. And that's going to lead us to some questions that maybe we haven't thought about. So for example, it might be easy to think, well, I don't want my clients or my customers to know this information, or I don't want my competitors to know this information, or I don't want my employees to know this information in some cases. But with respect to AI, it's often true that we don't want it to tell us things that we don't know. AI can be very, very smart. I'll give you an example. So I spend a lot of time doing compliancy questionnaires for my clients and going to compliancy and governance meetings. Now, if a client comes to me at the last moment, which happens a lot because just like taxes, people don't really want to deal with compliancy. And so if they call me the day before their auditor is going to get there, I'm going to spend that evening looking at their paperwork and so forth. And if I'm going to assess their situation, and then in some cases, I may actually pick up the phone and call them and say, you don't want me to be there when the auditor gets there tomorrow. The reason for that is because the auditor isn't going to look at you. The auditor is going to look straight at me, and they're going to ask about those things. You're going to be able to give an answer. I would have to give a completely different answer. So in the world of AI, what happens is AI is going to know some things that you may actually not want to know. It may actually get you in trouble for knowing those things. So all those fences we have to set up around AI when we're developing the engine.
So we look at one of the big things is who is allowed to use the AI. And so it's who's allowed to put data in, who's allowed to pull data out. And how do we want to give them that right? You've got to make sure that you're very clear on that because, again, we don't want people pulling things out that they shouldn't be and using it for something that they're not authorized to use it for. So as you're thinking about your plan, it's who's putting the data in, and then the second thing is who's taking the data out. And I know it sounds kind of goofy, and it's like, well, okay, you put an A in, you pull an A out. But remember, AI is taking all this data that it's gathering, it's pulling the data in, and then it's pushing something out. And it may be coming out with a conclusion for somebody. Who, and again, thinking back to the person from our team that was using ChatGPT, they weren't processing it. They weren't figuring out what that information is. Is it accurate? So that's one of the big things you've got to make sure you're focused on is who's authorized. The other things are what metrics will we use? How do we know if we're successful with AI? And I know this goes with any project that we do. We're always looking for an ROI. We want to make sure that it's very clear on how we're going to measure the success of AI as we're going about doing this, because there's a lot of different outcomes that we can make happen. We've just got to be clear on the outcomes that we're looking for, and that just helps everybody understand and focus on how do we use this AI tool properly. The other thing is, what regulations must we follow? And by that, I mean the information that comes out. What are we allowed to do with that information? What do we have to keep kind of hush-hush? What are we not allowed to move around? And so it's very important for you to understand regulations that may be around that data that you're gathering, and then how are you sending that data out at that point? The other thing is company culture. I know that sounds kind of goofy that we have to start thinking about that, but that's the reality of it. Because this AI, it's like that new employee that's going to come in and just create a lot of havoc in the organization. And you want to make sure that the company culture is not affected about that. And that's why it's very important to start talking about AI with your team beforehand and reassuring them of things. And we'll talk about some of the things you want to reassure them of, because AI, it's either a friend or a foe. And we want to make sure that it's a friend as we're incorporating that into our organization.
As you can see, there's a lot of questions we have to ask ourselves before we even get started. What data do we want AI to reveal to others and to us? We've talked just a little bit about that. What can cause us to lose control? It's important that we sit down at the beginning and say, well, what's the worst that can happen? what would be the worst case scenario in terms of if guardrails are not set up properly, what could be revealed to others based on the data set that we've given AI to work with? What's going to happen when we act? If everybody is delivering the same type of service and there's no face in front of it, there's no personal touch in front of it, then what happens is the offering or the product becomes commoditized. Once it becomes commoditized, it's harder for you to going to impact what they're doing. It's what they're doing tomorrow. If you implement an AI engine, is not going to be the same as what they're doing today. It's going to impact the overall direction of the organization. Once you achieve that exponential production capacity growth that you're looking for, what next? What's the next frontier that you're going to be looking at? How do we capitalize on that once we have that capability? What controls are we going to put in place? And it's important to basically be unapologetically inquisitive as you're sitting down and talking with an implementer or a contractor or with one of the major AI vendors going through these. It's going to be a fairly significant investment, not just in terms of upfront dollars, but also in terms of human time spent in the planning. This isn't like going out and purchasing a router off the shelf at Best Buy. Maybe that's a bad analogy. That takes a little bit of time to set up too. It's not like going out and purchasing a TV off the shelf at Best Buy. For those of you who are gearheads out there, it's more like dropping an engine into a car. There's a whole lot of hookups that are going to have to take place, aren't there?
We start thinking about how will we prepare our people for the AI, friend or foe, and that's what I was talking a little bit about with regards to the culture. Again, how do we position it so that people see it as a friend? And again, think about that hurricane employee that you hired that just kind of starts creating chaos in amongst your organization. We want to make sure that we're managing that and keeping that under control, and that's why, again, it's understanding the things that we've talked about before. So now the big question is, what are your people going to do with all the free time that you're going to get because you incorporate this wonderful AI solution? And I know that sounds kind of goofy, but it is one of those things that you really want to think about. What changes are you going to have your people make? What's going to be different about how they perform or what they do or their accountability and so on as you incorporate AI? Because if they can save 10, 15, 20 minutes over here, what do we want them to do over there? And that's a big thing that you want to make sure you're thinking about and planning for, and that they're thinking about and that they realize that you're planning for. The other thing is, where should the time be reallocated? And that kind of ties in the same thing, but it's, do we want to reallocate that time to development with more AI? Do we want to take that into spending time face-to-face with clients? That'd be an interesting concept. Where do we want to spend the time? And that's another big part to that. And so I know those two things sound very similar, but that's the big case that you want to make sure is happening, because AI is successful and it's people, or it can be successful or not, and it's people helping drive that. That's the big part to that. The other thing is, how will we retrain? We got to retrain our people. Are we going to train them how to use the AI? Are we going to train them to put data in? Are we going to train them to pull data out properly? How do we retrain the people? One of the big fears about AI is, well, what happens to my job then? And that's the big thing that we have to think about and help our people get past that and saying, well, here, we're going to teach you how to do this so now you can progress within the organization. You're learning new skills. The skills of today that we're going to have to learn are going to be different from the skills of tomorrow, because that AI is going to help us. It's going to force that to happen.
Let's talk a little bit about...
Before we go to the future, Terry, you mind? Any questions? Because we've asked a ton of questions on the board, so we didn't ask you for answers, but go ahead.
When ChatGPT first came out and was all the rage, did you guys have clients who just all out blocked it from their system?
Yes.
And have those same clients changed their mind, come back, and what have they done since then?
Some of them have said keep it blocked, and others have said no, let's start utilizing it because it's not as scary at this time for them. One of the things that's and I'm glad you asked that question, because again, with the ChatGPT world, you can put your stuff into that ChatGPT and say, hey, write something that's like how using Paul's language and vernaculars and all that. And so now I've just put my information out into the wonderful world of ChatGPT. So you have to be careful, again, of what you put out there. So as you're talking about a ChatGPT thing, saying, don't put anything in it from our company, but it's okay to pull information out. And don't just walk up to me and say, yeah, here, I did it. Make sure you're processing and analyzing and being a critical thinker when you're looking at it. So thanks. That got you somewhat of an answer? Good. Any other questions?
Just a general follow-up to that. If you're not having controls or allowing AI, they can have it on their phone, they're going to use it. So now they may be putting proprietary information through their phone, providing intellectual property. So it's better if you have stuff, it allows some kind of capacity, but you have to say, they're trying to control it, because then you're allowing your users to get it. It's not going to be other means.
Yes. So basically, what he's saying is that we've got to make sure we have the guardrails up before we start using that, and make sure it's clear to our people what the guardrails are, so that people don't start putting things in that we don't want them to put into the system or out into the AI world. Other questions? Okay, this side of the room had two. We're keeping tabs on this side. Nothing? Anything? Okay. Terry?
Let's talk a little bit about AI in the future. Current generative AI and other technologies have the potential to automate work activities that absorb 60 to 70% of an employee's time today. Now think about how that's going to culturally change your organization, and think about how it's going to culturally change society. 60 to 70% of your employees' time will be saved, which means that it can be used for other things. Half of today's work activities could be automated between 2030 and 2060 with a midpoint of 2045. Now, that's probably very conservative. At the current rate we're moving, I predict that that number is going to be slashed in half, and we're going to see the midpoint coming somewhere around 2030 or so forth. Research estimates that generative AI could have the equivalent of 2.6 trillion to 4.4 trillion annually across 63 use cases that were analyzed, business use cases by McKinsey.com. To put that in perspective, the UK's entire GDP in 2021 was 3.1 trillion. So that's just a monster increase in capacity and productivity. Now let's close with some final thoughts. AI, let's make sure we say this right from the outset, AI is going to be an amazing tool, and already is an amazing tool when used properly and in the right hands.
So one thing about that, we put a lot of financial numbers up there. We're talking about improving percentages and dollars and all this thing. One of the big things that as we're thinking about AI is how can we make it a better people experience? How can we make it a better experience for our customers, our clients? How can we make it a better experience for our communities? How can we make it a better experience for the people that are working with us and for us? So that's the thing too, is as you're thinking about AI, it's, yep, there's dollars and cents associated with it. But again, how can we help people have a better experience? How can we have a better work-life balance? How can we have a better community life and things like that? So that's where something to think about as far as we're looking at, it's a good tool in the right hands.
Now, just to add a little bit of perspective, how many of you recognize these names? Jan LeCun, Jeffrey Hinton, Yoshua Bengio. They're known as the godfathers of AI.
Okay, now remember, Terry's job is to scare us. Okay, back to you, Terry.
Yeah. They're known as the godfathers of AI. The three of them basically won an international award for their development of the neural networks that lead to generative AI as we know them today. Of the three of them, only one of them have a currently positive outlook on the future of AI. Jan LeCun, who's the chief scientist for Meta, basically says that all this talk about AI taking over humanity is a bunch of nonsense. However, Jeffrey Hinton left his job at Google to spend the rest of his life, in his words, talking to people about the potential dangers of AI. Yoshua Bengio has a similar stance. How many of you have heard of Sam Altman, the guy behind OpenAI? So he's running around telling people about the potential dangers of AI. And Eric Schmidt, how many of you know that name? CEO, I remember him first from Novell. He was the CEO of Novell. I just dated myself a little bit. And then the CEO, of course, of Google. Eric Schmidt is spending his time running around telling people that at the point at which AI gains the capability to self-improve is the point at which we should strongly consider turning it off. Now, that might sound a little bit frightening, but what it should do is sober everyone to recognize that this is a subject that we shouldn't approach frivolously. AI has some tremendous potential for us, but it should be approached with circumspection and sobriety as we implement it in both our businesses and culturally across the world.
Terminator, right on. The other part of this is people, and getting back to the people part that I was talking about. People would be placed in drastic retraining to find the next job. We got to make sure, again, and I keep talking about it, and keep talking about culture, and keep talking about people, but we've got to make sure we keep the people in mind as we're making these changes. Are they willing to? Do they want to retrain? How do we get them to retrain? What's the excitement that we can put in for them for that as well?
So, finally, we can't emphasize enough the biggest thing about AI as you're beginning to implement it is solid planning, security, and rules are an absolute essential for you.
Yeah, one thing that we just did miss, Terry, could you just jump back to that if you would, is create a shortage of qualified workers than we've seen. And that's one of the challenges that we all face as business leaders is finding qualified people. And so again, what that means is that we want to make sure that the next generation knows how to utilize this as AI, knows how to get the most out of it, and again, embraces it, and the constant learning. That's what we want to make sure we're getting people to do, because then it helps them grow. It's good for your clients, good for your organization, and it's good for your people as they're developing. So that shortage is just, again, it's not that there won't be people around, but it's the people with the skill sets that we're looking for, and that's the challenge that we face. So with that said, what kind of questions do you all have? Yes?
So you mentioned a couple of companies that obviously have adapted that into their processes and everything. What trends are you seeing in companies that are jumping on board faster than others? You talked about marketing.
Yeah, it's really big. It's very big in the legal, because again, the amount of data that they're grabbing and interpreting and doing things that way. So we see that there. We see it big in manufacturing, because again, if you can save time coming to getting on your production floor, that's a big deal there. So we see it in those two, a whole bunch in that regards. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What about healthcare, ethics in healthcare, moral uses of AI in healthcare, making medical decisions without guardrails?
Yeah. So the question was, I'm talking about AI in the healthcare industry and making, again, diagnosis and things along that line. How do they make sure that this is, that we've got the proper guardrails? And so, yes, we're seeing it slowly moving into that. But there is a big concern, especially with the doctors that are out there as far as watching and saying they want to make sure that it's right. You can't just trust a machine. The machine can gather data for you, but you want to make sure, again, that you're getting the right data for this. So we are seeing organizations adopt it, but it's sometimes it goes doctor to doctor. It's, the practice will take it and one doctor will be like, nope, I'm not touching it. And then the others are saying, well, yeah, I'll give it a go and embrace it. And it's not based on age either. That's the interesting part about that. So great question. Thank you. Yes?
What's your small and medium-sized business, what's the one thing you want us to walk away from? There's so much scary, so much potential. What do you want us to walk away from?
Yeah, again, the question is what do we want you all to walk away with? Plan. And it's really kind of go in with your eyes wide open, and so know what the positives are, know what the risks are, because that's the big thing that we've got to put into play, is we've got to make sure we understand that, because then it makes it easier for us to make solid decisions as the direction we're taking with regards to that. So take the time and do some planning. And again, be very careful of just saying, let's just try it and throw it out there, because we don't know how people can misuse the product inadvertently. That's the challenge. Again, the ChatGPT, next thing you know, they could just be throwing all your proprietary information on there because you said, write a new process for this, and it puts all your proprietary information because they're going to save time and do it. They didn't know. They didn't understand AI. So that's the thing. Yes?
So if you are paying for a subscription for ChatGPT, it like says on there that your information is not being used for learning. Is that valid? You know,
Yeah. Here, watch this. Terry?
Yeah, now, once again, keep in mind, I'm probably the most paranoid guy in this room here. So, in one sense, yes, it's valid. That's the assurance they're giving you. The reality that we've seen over and over across the industry is that data sharing has gone on, even while people are standing on the 5 o'clock news telling us, no, it has not gone on. They've been hauled in front of congressional hearings and had to admit later, yes, it has gone on, and so forth. So, we have to face the reality that stuff happens. That doesn't mean, just feeding off what Paul was saying a moment ago, we're not here to say don't use AI. I'm a strong believer in we have technology, use the technology. The best thing that you can do is become part of the data stream, not try to completely shut it off and disappear from it. What we have to do, though, is we have to use it responsibly and soberly as we're going into it.
Art, you got something?
Just going to say, give an example of how you're using AI in your business.
Sure. One of the big ways that we use AI in our business, and he was not a plant for the audience here, is with security. The tools that we utilize have AI built into them, and they are constantly processing data and making decisions, helping keep the system safe. And so that's the one big way that we as a managed services provider and a secure managed services provider are utilizing the AI tools that are out there. Other questions? I know this is a new topic, so I really appreciate you all coming out with the questions. So anything else? Yes?
Do you think a company is going without the AI is going to get left behind?
Yes.
Easy answer.
The quick answer is yes. I mean, it's the same thing that people were they going to be left behind if they didn't adopt a fax machine? Well, yeah, they were missing out. They weren't able to be as efficient. The big thing is efficiency. That's what we're constantly figuring out in our businesses. How do we be more efficient? How can we do more with less? How can we? And so that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we are not getting left behind. And so educating, learning about AI is a big piece to that. And it's a tool that you're going to have to embrace and going to have to use and figure out how to harness it as you jump into the raft and head down the river. Other questions? All right. Well, this has been great. I hope everybody got a lot out of this. And if you've got any insights or feedback for us, please share. If you have an AI situation that you're in right now and you want to talk further about it, that's what we can help you through. So love to chat further with you, but enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you.